Hi, everyone. Today, I'm joined with Dr. Josh Grimm, Interim Dean of the LSU Manship School of Mass Communication. Dr. Grimm recently developed a course for LSU Online, and today we're going to chat about his approach to selecting textbooks and instructional materials. But before we do that, Dr. Grimm, would you mind sharing a little more information about your course? What is it, what program it's for, and so forth?
Absolutely. So thank you for this opportunity. My class is about intercultural health communication, which is essentially examining health disparities and then trying to figure out the idealized health equity that would go with it and how we get there via communication, which is a really fancy way of saying, why is there so much inequality when it comes to health? How do we communicate across those barriers, across those populations to try to get everyone as healthy and safe in the long run as possible? And again, this class is offered through the Manship School of Mass Communication as part of our Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communication. And I'm really looking forward to teaching it.
That's wonderful. So had you ever taught this version of this course before, this specific topic, or was it a new course for you?
This was a relatively new course. So I've taught a class on media and health, which is mostly about like representation in media and different health messaging. But this specific focus on health disparity and intercultural health communication, this is the first for me.
And so I remember when we started developing this course together, one of the first things you mentioned was that it was a new course. So it made me a little bit nervous just because I knew that you had to select a textbook or go out and find materials for the course. And you mentioned that you wanted to use a low cost or no cost approach. What does that mean in terms of selecting course materials?
So for me, it just means figuring out what I want to talk about, figuring out what I want students to learn, and then finding the best resource for that to happen. And at least for me, I guess first and foremost, the perfect textbook doesn't exist. I'm never going to have exactly what I want to communicate with students communicated in a textbook. Unless I wrote it myself. So really the essential part is figuring out, starting with what I want them to know, and then finding out what's available out there that conveys what I want them to know. And most of the time that ends up being doing so in a different way than I had planned. And hate to say it, a lot of times it's better than I had planned, or better than I'd hoped anyway. And so I think that's the real important key, is starting there and saying, this can be done. I just need to figure out where those resources are located.
So what criteria did you use in selecting those materials?
So I think first and foremost, I started with scholarly journal articles, which is hit or miss because as we know, there's a lot of jargon and a lot of just kind of things that could be phrased better. We'll say that. And I say that as an academic, but also just starting out with trusted organizations that I knew were producing really great content. And so, that the CDC, WHO, these types of organizations are doing really fantastic, important work, but they also have the backing and the reputation that goes along with it. So I'm not just pulling something from some random website or just kind of reading off a string of tweets or anything along those lines, and just kind of finding, again, that base of information that I trust and I know will be important and effective and timely for my students, and then building it out from there.
Yeah, it's good that you talk about timely, because textbooks often get outdated so quickly. Is that something that was part of your consideration?
Yeah, that's a great point. And so the problem is, especially when we're talking about mass communication, when we're talking about mediated messages, the realm, if you look at social media 10 years ago versus social media, what it will be 10 years from now, if it'll even exist, or if it'll certainly exist in its current form, that's highly unlikely. The media landscape changes so quickly, and what is an effective health message 5 years ago might not be an effective health message 5 years from now. And so we try to find those fundamentals, we try to find that common ground, but then we want to build it out from there and try to find what is most current, what's most relevant, especially as we learn more about different populations and how they're disproportionately affected by illnesses and maladies, and trying to find a way to course correct on that. And so, unfortunately, while there are some great pieces, and I think there are certainly some timely concepts, the most recent applications of those theories and concepts are I think most valuable because they are recent and they kind of tap into what's happening in our society and what's kind of being reflected in that surrounding messaging.
Did you ever find yourself feeling limited or restricted in the types of relevant materials you found?
That's a good question. So I think maybe once or twice I did, and that was meant one of two things. One, I needed to reach out to someone, and so I reached out. For example, LSU Libraries was a wonderful resource. Rebecca Kelly was fantastic in trying to implement that. But also, it just kind of meant that I just need to keep looking, right? And I think that's, it's a timely process. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. At the same time, when you find that right piece, you know it. You start to read and you get through that introduction. You're like, oh, this is good. I hope it lasts. I hope this keeps up. And it does. And by the end, you're like, that's wonderful. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it ended up introducing some other concepts you hadn't really considered. And you ended up trying to work those into the class as well, just for a more robust experience.
Can you share the types of materials that we ended up using in the course? You mentioned journal articles originally, but what other things did we find?
So I think it's some nice overviews when it comes to theories. The nice thing about theories is it's kind of like some aspects of history where it's pretty well established when we're talking about the fundamentals. And again, the more recent you can get in terms of the latest application, it's wonderful. But just kind of summaries available from institutions and organizations online that kind of do honestly a better job of explaining the theory than I probably could on my own. And so that's a nice way of kind of pulling that in. I love podcasts. And so trying to find a podcast, a podcast about a significant historical event or a health challenge, I think is in ways much more interesting than hearing me prattle on about it. So you might not want to hear me talk about it for 10 minutes, but you'll listen to a podcast, a compelling, well-produced podcast about it for an hour. And learn that much more about it. And so those are types of things, while also incorporating recent news articles and analysis is also important. And like, again, some journal articles actually turned out to be really, really great. Again, some didn't work out as well. I didn't include those, but those that did, I'm really pleased with them. And I'm appreciative of the authors for finding a really efficient, compelling way to distill that information.
To be transparent, we did the low-cost option, right? There is a book assigned to this class. I believe you said it's about $7. So what went into that selection? Like, what did you look for, knowing that you were going to ask students to pay for a book or some of the materials? What went into that decision?
So I think the first part of that was I wanted to have something common that everyone read that lasted multiple weeks. I wanted some kind of shared experience. And so like similar to a common book sort of phenomenon at universities and things like that, something where that kind of holds that class together. And so maybe there might be a news article that I assigned that some people read more closely than others, or, they were really busy that week. And so they didn't devote as much time to it as they wish they would have. But a book like this that has that singular narrative that really hits on so many aspects that I wanted to do. And, I read this book years and years ago, and it was kind of like the template of like, okay, I want to find this information, but I wanted to find it in a series of readings that frankly just didn't exist online, at least not at what was available in my mind. And then looking at other syllabi, again, there's very few classes like this in the country, but those that do, those that talk broadly about health, and when they mention intercultural communication, this was a real mainstay of it. And I was like, wow, this could actually really work. And I don't know that I can find a better alternative. And I, hopped online and did some pricing, and I was like, okay, it's not no cost, but $6.99, I can live with that. I think that's okay.
It's definitely financially beneficial for students when we look at those low cost, no cost options. And you mentioned that it does take time to find these perfect nuggets of gold, if you will. Roughly on average, how much time do you think you spent per module looking for those materials?
Well, it's tough to say. Just because it's so easy to kind of hop down that Google rabbit hole and then suddenly you just look
Right,
up and you're like, where'd the
absolutely.
time go? Honestly, it took some time. I would say 2 or 3 hours, generally speaking, of just, again, kind of searching in different search engines, different databases, and things like that to try to find what I wanted. The nice thing was that once you kind of map out the class, it's always in the back of your mind, right? And so when you're just reading a news article or reading a message or scrolling through social media or whatever the case may be, you stumble across this thing, you're like, oh, that'd be perfect. And so there were a couple times actually, as you know, I went back and kind of changed a reading here or there because I found something better. But again, it's something where, so much of our lives are spent online anyway. And if you are interested in what you're teaching, which I hope everyone is, it's relatively easy to kind of align your interests with what you need to kind of track down for this class. And I was fortunate to be able to do that.
That's wonderful. There are a lot of databases and resources, and OER Commons, Merlot, OpenStax, Library of Congress. There's a ton of material out there on a huge variety of industries and disciplines. So what practical tips and suggestions would you offer to other faculty to kind of maybe move away from the textbook and adopt this approach for their courses?
I think a good place to start is other syllabi, what other people have done. Follow those folks on social media, because most of the time they're posting more things that they find are interesting, and there's some overlap with what you want to do. And so much of this is kind of understanding that as you kind of want to keep things timely, you'll be updating your readings as you go along. And so you might have just finished the course and you started teaching it, and something pops up just after you finish teaching that module, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have included this reading. Hey, just put it in next time. It's not a big deal. It's okay, and adjust accordingly. So that's a great starting point. I think another one is honestly just perseverance, just saying, what, I'm really committed to this. I really want to make sure students are not spending a bunch of money on textbooks, and especially if I'm only going to be using, 7 of the 12 chapters in any meaningful way. So you want to make sure you are really kind of committed to that idea and have really settled on the fact that I want to find what's here. And then the last one, I mean, maybe this isn't best practices, but I'd never had a problem with finding something that was pretty good and putting it in there, because as I developed the class, as I developed the course, as I continued to move along with it, I would inevitably find a better substitute for it. I'd be reading about another theory, a couple weeks later, and I'd be like, oh, actually, this reading might fit even better in that previous module, and I can move things around, and that's okay. That's what course development is for. And in the process, you end up with this, your strongest set of readings, but you also don't want to kind of spend hours and hours and hours and hours trying to find that unicorn that might not exist. But when you see another article, you're not as locked into this one idea, and you can begin to see how it actually helps hold that course together and hold those concepts together that you're looking to convey.
Those are great suggestions. Thank you. Before we wrap up and go, would you be willing to share your experience in developing this course for LSU Online? What were some of the benefits of working with a learning experience designer, and some of the challenges and things that you had?
So I think you and people like you are the benefit. So having someone who has designed these classes before, and that's why you want to reach out to LSU Online and get some guidance and guidelines on this, because it is a different experience. It's not better, it's not worse, it's different than teaching online, or teaching in person, I should say. And so the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can then say, you know what, I am an expert in this area, but I'm not an expert in online education. I have people who are, people like Lynn, who can walk me through and say, actually, you might want to reconsider this. I think the initial reaction for most faculty members would be like, well, I've taught this class 7 times before, and I think I know what I'm doing. But having someone who can walk you through and say, this is actually what other people are doing. And I can't tell you, I mean, how many times did you introduce me to something that I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a possibility, or I hadn't even considered that could be a really useful tool in this course. And so I think that's the main strength, is just the fact that you don't know everything about, you as the faculty member or the instructor don't know everything about online education and best practices and what works and what has worked in other classes similar to yours. Lynn, you do. And so I'm able to lean on you and get that invaluable experience and advice that I think shapes the course into something that frankly is better than I could have come up with on my own. And so I think that's hands down the ultimate benefit.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And is there anything else you want to add or mention?
No, I think the last thing I would say would be, for those of you designing classes, I imagine you took a class of some kind in higher education that required a textbook that you ended up selling back, and you brought a stack of books in, and it was like, here's $11, thank you so much. Remember that moment. Think back to how you felt, think back to how much you may not have used those books in every single book, and be open to the fact that there might be another way around this, and there might be another approach that would really work well for you. It's very possible that there is a class that is absolutely incapable. It has to have a textbook. I'll certainly own up to that. But more likely than not, you can go zero cost, or again, low cost is a wonderful alternative where you don't need this textbook that costs $125, because it's not just your class, it's all the other classes that require that same cost of a textbook that ends up stacking up and accumulating over time. And you're kind of that first domino where if you can make that change and others follow suit, it can make a real impact in those students' lives.
Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts, and for sharing your experiences with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.